Bob Chapek out as the head of Disney. Bob Iger pulls Brett Favre, which maybe I shouldn't use that analogy these days, but a Brett Favre coming back out of retirement. Tom Brady, maybe, let's use that. Tom Brady coming back for Iger, 2-year deal. John, give it to me what you think from a sports business ESPN point of view. What does this all mean?
All right, so let's take it because there are so many different tentacles here. Jimmy Pitaro, he is the chairman of ESPN and Disney Sports. In your mind, Andrew, is this move good for Jimmy Pitaro or bad for Jimmy Pitaro?
Well, I think he was in a good space with Bob Chapek, but I do think with Bob Iger, it's even better for him. From what I understand, I think they have a very good relationship. Iger is the one who gave him the job to be the head of ESPN. So he has a stake in Pitaro's success, which is always important. When we know from sports, if you're a GM and you pick a player, or in business, if you pick an employee. So I think it's a positive. We know from Iger's history, he likes sports. I mean, the other big thing he was supposedly going to do, if he, this was kind of a surprise for him to come back, although there were kind of some rumblings for forever. Maybe he tried to buy the Phoenix Suns, even though there were some issues there because ESPN had reported on Robert Sarver, and Iger was, I think he held that against Iger from what I heard. And I think Bill Simmons might have said something about that as well. So yeah, I think a good thing for Pitaro. Your take?
Yeah, I give it a push. I think Chapek, he was a below the radar sports fan. He let Pitaro run his own company. Pitaro had a lot of autonomy, it appeared, overseeing ESPN. When they had the activist investor that was trying to push Chapek into spinning off ESPN, Pitaro, helped convince Chapek to stick around. I don't think it's certainly not bad for Pitaro because he does have an established relationship with Iger. Iger is a huge sports fan. I'm a little I would give it a push, leaning good for Pitaro.
I love it. You love being like a Michael Nathanson to give like a little what do they do when they do their little ratings? Like which way you're going with it? I don't know that stuff.
But on a scale of 1 to 10. All right, for the NBA.
Wait, hold on. Let me say one more thing about that before. Is that I hear you. And look, the world's changed and where we're going here. But I do think under Chapek, and look, all these people are going to be very hands-on. They're the heads of Disney. But there was a feeling, a lot of cases that, business side, there are a lot of demands from Disney, and there still might be in terms of spending and what to spend on and when to spend. And that there over time that there has been a lot of rumblings about, some of the financial people at Disney and how much of influence they've had on ESPN in recent years.
The big kahuna coming up. We talk about it almost every pod, the NBA. Does this move, does it mean ESPN's more likely to keep the NBA or less likely to keep the NBA?
I'd say more likely. But I think they're likely regardless. Like, I don't know. Like, I think overall, let's just give an overall before. Like, I asked you, I don't know, like, yet if it, look, Bob Iger's Bob Iger. Ithaca College grad, second greatest Ithaca College media grad in history. I know, John, you think I'm pointing to me. No, Gorilla Monsoon, #1 all time.
Right now, let's take you to Gorilla Monsoon.
Once again, another Coliseum exclusive. Our Coliseum cameras literally everywhere here in the Hartford Civic Center. And Paul Bear, well, I am amazed at what happened.
No doubt. So Iger, huge success. And you can't, look, he's like, he's on that Mount Rushmore of great media executives of all time. And so him coming back in his 72, that seems like a plus. Iger did great work. And that's why they want him back. That's why they can't replace him. Do I think it's that different what they're going to do? I don't know Chapek, and I don't know, like, I don't have any like really inside information about Chapek except stuff I've read. So, I mean, could I see a Chapek maybe making more of a dollars and cents decision from what I know about him? Yeah, I think so. Like, Iger is very pragmatic, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a love and appreciation of sports that maybe someone who doesn't have the history might not have had. But I don't know if that's like a strong take I have. I just think Iger is just a proven winner in that position.
If there's one theme on this pod that I try to stress all the time, it's the sports business and sports media is such a relationship business. And who has better relationships with the NBA than Bob Iger? And so I would say, I think it was likely under Chapek that they were going to keep the NBA. I think it's extremely more likely that they're going to do a deal with the NBA, because Bob Iger is somebody who Adam Silver is comfortable with. He knows.
No, that makes sense.
Absolutely knows. I think that is an area to mine there. Our favorite topic, ESPN going direct to consumer.
Okay.
When Iger was running Disney, this whole direct-to-consumer strategy, it came from him. So in one sense, it's like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Of course, he's going to go direct-to-consumer. But direct-to-consumer has now totally changed. They're looking at, and one of the reasons that Chapek's not around is that Disney Plus lost $1.5 billion last quarter. And so you have to sort of corral that. ESPN is still making a ton of money from the cable operators. I know that they're able to go direct to consumer by contract if they want, but then they would get less money from the cable operators. It's a sort of a sliding scale. I still think that they're going to go direct to consumer within the next 2 years, and Iger's going to be around for 2 years. But I do have questions. It's something to continue to look at there.
It does change the equation of our big wager that you've come around to the right side. I do think 50 to 60, I think 50 million homes is probably the number. We've talked about that before. When it gets to around 50 million homes for ESPN, then they'll offer ESPN, the mothership, direct to consumer, while keeping it also on cable, giving people the choices of being able to watch either way, and with the hope of keeping that number of 50 million, which, people kind of feel like might be where it stops, or at least, where the churn becomes less. And then you start adding the people who now would be direct to consumer, and you bring that number. So then where does your subscriber number get to over the years? And you start moving your business towards direct to consumer, and where if the churn becomes even more with cable, you have a backup plan. And I don't think you make all these rights this way and make such a move if you're going to just change course. I mean, you could, and and the NFL is the big one, you could try to change course, but I'm not sure if that's the way you're going to build, right? If we're building towards the future, the spending on ESPN is not going to end. They just did $40 billion worth of deals, and they're going to spend more on the NBA.
The other thing I'm looking at is ESPN's relationship with gambling. When Iger was running ESPN, he was a bit of a prude when it came to gambling. He wanted to control the Disney brand. He was scared about associating the Disney brand with gambling in a big way. It appeared that Chapek was much more inclined to doing something big when it came to gambling. I seemed more positive to it. Does this drive ESPN closer or further away from doing a gambling related deal? Not taking sponsorship, because of course they'll take sponsorships from gambling companies, but actually setting up like a sports book with the ESPN brand or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you come here and we want to have answers. I don't really have an answer, right? Like
these are all questions that we're looking at, right?
Because Bob Iger didn't get to his position by just staying stale with his thoughts, right? They evolve and you change. That's what the best leaders do. You have to pivot all the time if you're going to be a good leader. And look, if you look at ESPN as a business, the gambling aspect of it makes sense. And I don't think they're spinning off. I know that there's a lot of talk about that, but if you look at the things that they would do if they spun off, they just don't make sense. They'll be able to do a gambling deal if they don't spin off. And so, I mean, I feel like the Iger move, again, we don't have answers yet. I'm not saying I do. And I really, and I think this is why I like doing the podcast with you. We really try to know what we're talking about. This is it's a little early to really know what they're doing. But my sense would be that maybe the business aspect of it, of what they're going to do in terms of ESPN, I'm not going to talk overall Disney, in terms of ESPN, is probably going to be similar. But I do think that Iger understands the art more than Chapek did. Like, for example, and Chapek seems to, and he comes from parks, he just kept raising the prices on the parks. And I think they made more money than ever before in terms of their parks. which might make sense, but there is something about making your most loyal people happy, so they continue to, so you don't lose those people. So I think Iger, with the art of being the head of Disney, is going to be much better, which is probably, good for ESPN, for talent. Now, they did spend a lot with Chapek, especially at the top talent. But I think that could be different. I think one thing I tweeted out the other day, and this is 100%, I think, if this happens a year ago, all the stuff we talked about in terms of sports media would have been totally different. I think Al Michaels likely ends up back at ESPN, ABC, Monday Night Football, very tight with Iger, golfing buddies. There were discussions before Iger left to try to trade for Al. I know that there's denials, like people didn't know that. Like I wrote about it. Like, yeah, they all know about it. They're all playing golf together. They all know what was going on. They can act like they don't. We'll let them do that. But the bottom line is, I think Iger might have led to Al being back. Joe Buck then stays at Fox, maybe eventually goes to ESPN because Al's going to retire at some point. Aikman, I think probably stays at Monday Night Football, but a lot of moving chairs if this had happened a year ago, which is kind of interesting. What ifs if this had happened at a different point in sports media and media history.
All right, final thing on this. Iger is going to sign a 2-year deal, and part of what he's trying to do is find a successor, which, by the way, is what he tried to do for a decade before he actually left. Yep. And they got Chapek. Is Jimmy Pitaro on that list of potential executives? I would think he is.
Yes. I would think he is on that list. He has that pedigree. If you look at his Disney background, what he's run, I think that he potentially could be on that list. Do you want to be on that list? They're 0 for 2. He's not very good at this. I don't think I'd let Bob Iger, as great as he is, pick this thing.
I want to be on that list, but maybe I don't want to get it. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. You probably want to
put me on the list. Put me on the list.
You probably get a big house, which I'm sure Jimmy Pitaro has, but you probably get a bigger house. Yeah, I would think Pitaro's on that list. I mean, he seems to be in that family, and at that level, I can't imagine he's not on the list.
One thing about Iger, as we head out of this topic, is during his first run, he was known for these innovative deals where he shocked the business by buying Pixar. He bought all the Marvel movies, the Star Wars movies. Within the next 2 years, we're going to see a big deal that we're not really contemplating right now. I mean, could there be something where there's some sort of merger or they work something out? These are things to look at, but I can pretty much guarantee
Apple and Disney might merge.
Well, it wouldn't be a merge. Apple would buy Disney potentially, but there's going to be some big deal that Iger oversees, because that's what he does. As I said, like with the Pixar, the Marvel, Star Wars.
Yeah, that's Chapek guy. Yeah, I mean, again, these guys, this is what they do. I was surprised Chapek made no deals. You got to put your stamp on it right away, and especially you got to get people's attention. Like I just remember reading the Disney Wars book, and Iger did that very well. I forgot exactly which deal he made, but just right in, you got to go and spend some big money and make some deals to really establish who you are. And I feel like Chapek didn't do that. You can't be just a manager at that level.
Wait, you finished the Disney Wars book, but you can't finish my boy Trick Mickles' Apple book?
Well, Disney Wars is pretty good. Not that Trick Mickles is very good. It's a very good book, Chip, but Disney Wars is special. That was an amazing book. If you haven't read Disney Wars, go read that one. They gave full access, and and then everything broke loose, and it was a tremendous book. So Trip Mickles' book's gotten more publicity on this podcast, and no offense, Trip, than it deserves.
We have sold at least 3 copies of Trip Mickles' book on this podcast.
All right, let's move on. We both reacted. We're on the phone right away after this. Sign of a good podcast partnership.